Well, welcome to the Women's March Canada podcast, making the equality of women in Canada the new norm. My name is Melissa Durrell. I'm your host. This is episode 19, and we're calling this one Fierce Founder, and that's because we have Monika Jaroszonek with us. She's got a new company called RATIO.CITY, and RATIO.CITY just won the Fierce Founders competition and a cool $100,000. So she's the CEO and she's the co-founder. It's from Toronto. The company uses digital tools to help modern city builders and let me start that over again because I want to get this right, Monika? So RATIO.CITY is a company that uses digital tools to help modern city builders find and analyze the best areas to redevelop properties. So as a city councillor, I find this really fascinating. So she won the big Bootcamp, Fierce Founders Bootcamp that takes place at Communitech, one of our top tech accelerator centers in this country. So congratulations, Monika, and welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. It's been a really exciting few weeks since we won. I mean, the prize money is amazing, but we've also got some really great publicity, and a lot of people have reached out to us as a result of the win. And so many more doors have opened for us just in the past month alone. And we actually managed to make our first hire this week already, so we can really ramp up our software development. We're really, really excited to be growing our team and to take advantage of all these opportunities that are all of a sudden opened for us just as a result of this program. Very cool.
So I kind of gave your elevator pitch here in the sense of, how does it work? What does it do? Why did you want to start a company that does this?
That's a lot of questions. All right. So what we've done is we've built an online 3D mapping and analysis tool. So what we want to do is help real estate developers unlock development locations quickly and strategically. Ultimately getting construction projects through the municipal approvals process and out of the ground faster. Again, anyone who lives in this part of Ontario knows that we're really lucky to have a great problem. Like, lots of people want to live and work around here, and there's a limited amount of space. You know, we do need to protect our agricultural land. We need to protect our escarpment. We need to protect the green belt. And so we've got more and more people that have to live in less amount of space. So how are we going to do that? So right now, what we've built is, again, we're focused on the city of Toronto right now. And we've built the entire city in 3D. We've mapped every single property in the city. So there's over 500,000 properties in the city of Toronto. We've got all their property lines, their address points, the existing uses, and we've overlaid the zoning information, and we've overlaid the allowable heights. The interesting thing is all that information is available, but it's not available in one place. It's not available conveniently. And what we've done is we made it all searchable.
So oftentimes people, I find they'll say, well, this is zoned and all the zoning is different in every different city in the sense that is it MR, C1, sometimes it's downtown 2. And then there's a meters, right? Some people are using 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters, but others are using floors, 25 floors. So there's consistency. So to visually see it would be really fantastic.
Exactly. And a lot of this information is in 2D map format. And so what's really interesting is because we've made it all 3D, you can see. So again, and zoning, for people who aren't familiar with the zoning process, zoning isn't like the 10 commandments, right? It's a starting point for discussion. And so there is a process where you can build something that doesn't conform to zoning, but you have to approach the city, start a negotiation, and explain why you should get an exemption to the general rule. And again, that can be because, you're close to a great transit location, and so you should be able to build a slightly taller building, or, you're in a neighborhood that has a specific building type that may not conform to what the rules are, but, because there are this certain building type, you should be able to build it. So there's a process to ask permission to do things that are against the zoning rules. But again, you need really specialized knowledge. So you need to know how to translate all of those obscure M5 type codes and translate that into actual buildings. So essentially what we've done is we've taken our professional expertise, and we'll get to that next, but once you've got a site that you're interested in because it meets your criteria, because it's on a corner, because it's close to transit, because it's in a great neighborhood, because it's close to a park, whatever your criteria are, you can just sort of click on a site and build a building and then customize specific parameters. So you can very easily understand, again, what the city wants you to build, and you can sort of adjust it to match your, again, as a real estate developer, your own specific target niche.
Yeah. So you're selling this to developers? Is that your market?
Yeah, so our primary market is real estate developers and people in the real estate industry. And so it might be, for example, municipalities. I mean, municipalities have urban planning departments, you know, and here in the city of Toronto, they're the most overworked department in the entire city right now. And so, you know, if we can help them understand the implications of density and upzoning, you know, that can help them be much more proactive in their conversations, in these negotiations with real estate developers. You know, maybe it's municipal lawyers, people who are also very active in this space, urban planners, commercial brokerage agents who are, you know, specifically looking for types of sites for clients that they might have. Maybe it's landowners who actually own a number of properties and want to understand what the potential is. So there's a number of users. Our primary focus right now is real estate developers, but I think anybody who's involved in the land acquisition process for real estate development, whether it's residential or mixed use or office, you know, maybe it's distribution centers, maybe it's building seniors housing, because again, each of those building types has really specific requirements, what they're looking for. And so we can help them understand the city urban structure and help them find sites easier than and currently what they're doing is driving around neighborhoods and knocking on doors. So we're trying to make that process a little bit smoother.
I mean, did you think you were going to become an entrepreneur? Did you see yourself starting a tech company?
No, not at all. This has been actually a very interesting an interesting journey for me. I studied architecture actually at the University of Waterloo, and I always wanted to be an architect. I've always loved cities. I grew up in a small town in the Niagara region, but whenever I had an opportunity, I would love to travel. I'd love to go to big cities, and I was always fascinated about how cities grow, how people live in cities, how they change. And I definitely think of them as really, it's an organic process, but ultimately it's a process that's really fundamentally affected by the economics, by the power structures, by the politics of the time. And you think of cities that, you know, right now we think of as beautiful, so whether it's Paris or Barcelona, but when those cities were changing from a medieval, ancient kind of town to the cities that we think of as, you know, the Paris of today, those were also very traumatic times. But again, they were based on, you know, Napoleon's army and his chief planner who wanted to cut these, you know, grand alleys through the city, but people at the time hated it.
Yeah.
You know, now we think back and we think, wow, it's so beautiful. So it's also just being able to see the larger picture and understand all of the forces that impact the spaces that we live in.
I love that you say that, because there's so many times where, you know, the city that I live in, there's a lot of, you know, are we a small city or are we a growing metropolis? And you're constantly butting heads over that. But this idea that the city is evolving and density is important. Actually, we need to have density to support the infrastructure that we're putting in. And so I think that's really interesting.
And I think ultimately of beings are social creatures, right? We like being close to other people. And also when you look at whether it's technology, innovation, all of the sort of big changes that have happened in society tend to occur in cities, because again, you've got a large number of people in close proximity where they can bounce ideas off each other. And I think Kitchener-Waterloo is a prime example of a very successful, you know, medium-sized city that has really, you know, taken advantage of the incredible talent that's there, you know, the universities that are there, the tech ecosystem for it's incredible. And so now you can see the implications of that on the city. And again, I hadn't been, you know, in Kitchener or Waterloo since I graduated a little while ago. And when I drove into downtown Waterloo, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this is what happened. This is so cool. Yeah. But again, it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
So let's talk about being at the Accelerator Center. So you came back and what was it like? I mean, you went from being an architect to just, you know, nerding out in a tech space.
Well, exactly. So the Fierce Founder Bootcamp was a great experience for me. For people who may not be familiar with it, it was 6 days. And those 6 days were primarily a lot of sort of learning and working sessions, working with some of the really knowledgeable coaches and mentors at Communitech. They packed a lot of information into those 6 days. So we had 3 days back in January and 3 days in February. And so in between those 2 3-day sessions, we had a month to sort of take everything that we learned in those first few days, take it back, think about it, and revise our investor pitch based on that information. And so what was very surprising for me was, it's a 5-minute pitch. I was like, you know what, five minutes is a very short amount of time. It was much harder than I originally expected, because yes, 5 minutes is a very short amount of time, but you've got so much information that you want to cover, because again, this is your baby. You've been studying, you've been planning this business, you know it inside and out, and you want to tell everyone about it. But to just distill it down to 5 minutes was really tricky. I ended up spending about 3 weeks full time on those 5 minutes. And I was a bit worried that I was wasting my time because I'm never going to get to these 3 weeks back. But on the other hand, it paid off for me, which was amazing. And now that I've got that 5-minute distillation of the business, of the vision that we are building, it means that every time I've got to present, I can just pull that out of my back pocket, and I know that I'm hitting all the highlights. I can add or modify it. So I think ultimately it has saved me a significant amount of time, even though at the time it took a huge effort to get it to the point where it's at now.
Yeah, I was reading this book, and it was talking about how I guess was it Watson, the light bulb. He could do it in 2 minutes, which was one of the most complex challenges, was to be able to explain the mechanics behind it. And they're saying, like, if he can do it, anybody can get their really complex idea to a short amount of time. And that truly is one of the challenges, I guess, in getting a complex idea down, but to a point where everybody can chew on it. Talk to me a little bit. Obviously, you're an architect, and then you were in a tech space, both very male-dominated spaces. I think in architecture, I heard something. It was like 7 to 8% are women. It's a very small percentage.
It's interesting, because when I was at school, I think our class was the first year that we actually had achieved gender parity back in the day. Okay. And so when I graduated and actually went out to the workforce, I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, because I'm used to just being in a sort of, it's normal, right? There's kind of equal number of males and females. But then when I went out and started working, I realized, oh, that doesn't actually translate. Yeah. And then since I've been practicing, I was like, okay, well, maybe it just takes a while for all these women to sort of graduate up to roles. But it is a very intense industry, and it is quite predominantly male dominated. I think a lot of people do take their architectural education and translate it to other uses. So whether it's, again, dealing with policy at the municipal or the provincial level, there's a lot of architects that I know that are in that space, whether it's, design on a much more individual level or art installations. There are all sorts of other consulting type roles. And so, again, I think architecture is a classical education. I think people with that background tend to do other things. But construction and real estate development are quite male dominated. I think it is changing, but like everything else, it's a slow change.
I'm just looking at what one of the judges said to you at the competition from Deloitte Canada, and she said that you stood out because you were a differentiated product, and the value of RATIO.CITY creates for the current marketplace. And so a big part of that is that your product's ability to drive costs down for developers. So I'm totally switching subjects here, because I think it's interesting. You're going from the architectural space, which is predominantly male dominated, into land development, which is very male dominated space as well. And you're also, and now you're going to be selling this product. So you talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, real estate development is a very traditional industry, and it's really based on personal connection. So again, it's like a network of guys who know guys who own parking lots in different areas, right? Or it's about, calling up the last architect or the last urban planner that you worked with to ask their advice. Or it's about the commercial brokerage agent who really knows everyone in their business in a specific neighborhood. Like it's really, really hyper local knowledge and really relationship based. But in this day and age, you kind of assume that information is freely available and searchable. So what we're trying to do is take all of that expertise that is out there and create a database for it. So even though you may not know a specific neighborhood, like the back of your hand, but you could still make an informed and strategic decision to get through that municipal approvals process, to get permission, to find sites that are more likely to get permission from the city, to build faster. And so essentially what we're trying to do is save developers staffing time, find better quality sites in the first place, and then get projects potentially out of the ground faster, saving them significant carrying costs.
Okay, very cool. All right, so you're starting in Toronto. Where do you go next?
Kitchener-Waterloo, of course.
Oh, really?
Well, we were actually, I was just talking to my co-founder about that earlier, and
Erin Morrow. Do you want to talk a bit about her?
It's actually a him. So it's interesting because we both have a background in architecture. We both attended the University of Waterloo, but his background is a little bit different. He's actually been working with a global engineering firm developing software for them, and so it was his idea originally. For this company. It was funny because I was describing my consulting work, and a lot of it is highly repetitive, and I was laughing that if I'm not careful, that some 20-year-old kid is going to come along in 5 years and make a software to put me out of a job. And so Erin suggested, well, why don't we just do that and get a 5-year head start on that kid? And so I thought that was actually a good idea. It was a wacky idea at first because, again, it had never occurred to me. I was always going to grow up to be an architect. And so then to think about that same skill set, that same tool set, translated into a digital tool that people could use to understand cities better was really interesting. And then the more we started talking about it, the more we started talking to people in the industry about it, we realized there was nothing like that out there. And so we're like, oh, actually, maybe we can do this. Actually, maybe there is an untapped opportunity. So that's how it started. It definitely wasn't it didn't exist more than a year ago. Actually, I think we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary of the genesis of the idea.
So how different is your life now then, before when you were an architect to being a tech founder now, a successful tech founder?
Yeah, well, we're still very early stage. So again, I'll save the successful qualifier until we're a few years out.
Right.
But I think ultimately what it comes down to is listening. So as an architect, you're a consultant, and so you work with a client, and your job is to really understand your client and their objectives and to help them achieve it. And that's what a successful consultant will do. As a tech founder, what we're doing is we're looking at a whole industry. But again, we still have to listen to all of those people that we speak to really understand what they're trying to achieve, what will be useful for them, and what they will see value in. And so I think there is a transferable skill set, but the day-to-day is fundamentally different because, again, I don't have a single client that I'm talking to. I'm talking to all sorts of different people. I'm learning all kinds of new skill sets, all sorts of new acronyms. And again, the tech industry has its own language, so I'm trying to learn the lingo and be able to translate the architecture / building / real estate terms into software terms and vice versa.
Do you love your new life?
It's very exciting, and it still hasn't quite sunk in, actually. It's it's exciting, and every day is an adventure. So that part's pretty great.
So we go across this country. What kind of advice would you have for other female entrepreneurs?
I mean, I think it sort of comes down to your own personality. But for me, what I wish I had known years ago is, I guess, the value of networking. And, I'd been so busy, working as a consultant, working on projects, working with clients, that I barely had a chance to get my head above water to see larger trends and to talk to other people. And so for me, it's been really interesting to speak to other entrepreneurs, talk to people in other industries, talk to potential customers, listen to their reactions, listen to their thoughts, and just be able to take all of that, consider it, and then put it back into the product that we're building. So for me, I think that the value of networking and these types of programs, I mean, Communitech in Kitchener is a great example. Mars here in Toronto also has some really great programming. And so again, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've met, especially the female ones, have had great professional success in other fields, and now they've recognized a problem that they know how to fix, but they just got to figure out how to get up to speed running a tech startup. Even though they may be experts in other fields, there are a lot of programs out there, and the more you can take advantage of them, the quicker you can learn and the quicker you can use your expertise to, again, solve that problem that you know the solution to.
Thanks, Monika. How can people find you? Where are you on social?
Well, our website is RATIO.CITY, RATIO.CITY. LinkedIn is fine. Unfortunately, I still haven't managed to set up a Twitter account. So maybe in the future.
Get on that. You're a fierce founder now.
I guess.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you enjoyed listening to our program today. Your comments are always welcome and encouraged. You can subscribe to the Women's March Canada podcast by clicking on our subscription button on YouTube. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our nation. This is Women's March Canada podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Women's March CDA and on our website at womensmarchcanada.com. I'm Melissa Durrell. Have a great day.